friends, and welcome back to the Applied Leadership Podcast. My name is Blaine. This is my partner, Brandon Young, and we are here to chat with you about your questions about leadership and management in life, and we're going to do our best to discuss these things in an open way and see what we can come up with. Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm still in recovery mode from my beep test. Thanks. That's the gift that keeps on giving.
Okay. Do you want to describe for the folks what the beep test is that you're referring to? It's a workout.
Yes.
I'll give them a clip.
Yeah, it's a workout.
Right.
Yes. So, and I'll go backwards. Yeah. Last week you and I were chatting and you said, "Oh man, I'm just trashed. I just did a beep test." And I was like, "What's a beep test?" A beep test is every 2 minutes there is a beep, and on the beep you start with 2 burpees plus a 200-meter run. And every beep thereafter, you add 2 more burpees. So you go from 2 burpees in a 200 meter to 4 burpees in a 200 meter, so on and so forth. There we go. So
pretty bad, right? The first couple iterations are not so bad, and then it really sneaks up on you.
It was terrible. It was terrible.
Do you want to say how many, what round you got to?
20. Yep.
You completed the round with 20 burpees in a 200-meter run?
Yeah.
That's brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was like, I got to at least hit 22 because you said, I think you said 22 or was it 24? Which one was it? I can't remember.
Yeah, I completed the round of 22 and I flamed out during the round of 24. I think I only got like 17 burpees in that round. I was falling apart.
I was like, I got to try and meet him.
All right, there's one for you. Feel free to do that. Free fitness advice on the Applied Leadership Podcast as a cherry on top.
Yeah, it ain't easy having pals.
No. All right. Well, we do have a good question that came in this time, and it was from Joseph. He sent it to us on Facebook, and his question is about onboarding, essentially, and he would love to hear it discussed from 2 different perspectives. So on one hand, maybe you're a manager or a director and you're getting a new person onto your team. So what are our thoughts on, doing your best at onboarding a new person onto your team?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side of the coin would be, what if you're the new person? So what if you're a manager or a director or VP, you name it, and you're going in and assuming a role of leadership, but you're the new person and other people have been around a while. So we kind of have 2 questions, but they're both essentially, how do we think about getting started? How do we think about onboarding that first day, week, month, whatever time frame you want to use? I think this is a really, really good question. And I think in the last 3 years, a ton of people have changed jobs. Since kind of the start of COVID, there was, I guess, what we call the Great Resignation. And you and I know lots of people, especially in white collar jobs, that have moved from, company to company or industry to industry even.
Sure.
And I think there have been a lot of people that have changed jobs recently, and there's probably been a lot of good examples and probably a lot of frustration around that. And it's going to continue to be a thing, I think, in a world of remote work and some people going back to the office or not. I think this is a real thing right now. So I love the question.
Yeah. So just to make sure that I'm oriented to the discussion here, onboarding in 2 perspectives. One, I'm essentially some type of a leader and I'm onboarding a new teammate. Or 2, I am a new leader being onboarded to a team, or I am bringing on new managers underneath me.
No, the first one, yeah. So you're a leader, but you're the new person and you're joining a team.
Got it.
Yeah, it's sort of like your first day as a platoon leader.
Yeah.
You're like, you're supposed to be in charge.
Do you want to talk about it? Is it still fresh? Is it still fresh?
Well, yeah, I can. Yeah, I don't know if there's any advice in this, but let's dig into this story a little bit, and maybe there's something to work with. The Army, for many of you listening will know this, and the military in general, but many of you may not. The way the officer ranks work in the military is that, starting from day 1, when you're like a fresh-faced second lieutenant in an Army example, you go to some training, maybe you do 6 months or 7 months worth of training, but then you show up at a unit and you join a platoon, an infantry platoon or a tank platoon or whatever, and you're the newest person on the job. You have the least experience being in the platoon of anybody there, and in the Army's infinite wisdom, you're the person in charge. And that is a pretty interesting dynamic for a 22 or a 23-year-old person to walk into, is that you're the new guy or the new gal. And by the way, you are responsible for everything the platoon does or fails to do. And the Army, though we poke fun at it a lot, has some pretty good mechanisms in place that make that process work. I mean, it certainly can work really well. Doesn't always, but it can work really well.
Yep.
And Brandon, you've been on the other side of this coin, so I'd love to hear your perspective. But this is the same for people. I think whether you could be 45 years old and be in corporate America and take a role as the director of something in some company that you've never worked in, and you inherit a team and a bunch of people who have been there a while, and you're the new person, and you've got to figure out how to come in there as a new person and lead. So I guess maybe we'll start on this side of it. I will say, from my perspective, that was incredibly daunting, and I knew that the Army was set up in order to help me to be successful if I was able to do my job. And so I'll give you like a couple quick things, then I want to hear your perspective, because Brandon, you were at NCO. You were one of these folks that had been there a long time and actually knew what was going on and kept receiving these new people to be in charge. So I'll just say this. I think if you can show up with a certain level of competence, like general competence, though you may not have much specific competence, if you can show up as well prepared as you can be with a level of kind of general competence on what it is you do, and if you can show up with a reasonable level of humility, which means, hey, I know some things, but I have an awful lot to learn, and you can balance that humility with a bit of confidence in that, which basically would be in your ability to learn, right? So if you have some base level of functioning, like you're a reasonably skilled person, you've done what you can do to be prepared on the front end, you're curious and humble when you show up, and you can balance that humility with a level of, I can learn this stuff. I can do this. I'm willing to take the role and take responsibility. We're just going to have to do it together. That would be on like a meta level. I think that's a good approach to go into that with, but I want to hear, I want to hear it from your perspective, because you've certainly done both.
Sure. Well, and you said it in the end there, you started out with competence, humility, and confidence. And the word that I had in my mind was willingness. I would add willingness to that, which you included in that dialogue. You said, if you're willing to show up in this way, I would say also have a willingness to be a part of the team. And I think all of this, regardless of which way you look at it, is preceded by the reality that being the new person is hard, regardless. And so on the flip side of that, I think all these things that you have shared, humility, confidence, competence, willingness, you could say the same for the folks on the other side. So if I'm in a position where, back when I was in the military, I was a non-commissioned officer, so I'm a sergeant, and I'm seeing new platoon leaders come and go, I'm seeing new commanders come and go, there has to be a willingness there on our side or any team side to say, okay, for whatever reason, we have this new leader. Whether you're in the military, you have the new leader because that's just the way the cycle works. It's going to turn every 24 months. There's no shock to that. None of us should be surprised. Outside the military, in the corporate sector, in the social impact sector, for whatever reason, things turn over. I think number one, that willingness is pretty critical on this side of the equation. Are we willing to give somebody a try? Are we willing to let them show up and actually get settled a little bit? Or are we just going to cut them off below the knees? Which happens. I've seen it done really well. I've seen it done really poorly. I've been in situations in the military where non-commissioned officers above me, no chance. They were completely unwilling to receive a new officer, and I've been in situations where NCOs above me were completely willing. And I will just tell you that this is one where I can be unequivocal about it and say, the willingness to be open to receive somebody is a far better approach, because whether you like it or not, this is your team, this is your leader, and you don't get to choose. And aren't we all? Can't we all sympathize with that? Can't we all relate to that? Whether you're in a Fortune 500 company or a small business, in many ways, you're not going to pick the leader above you. So starting out with the understanding that, look, being the new person's hard. It doesn't matter if you're quote unquote in charge or not. and having the willingness to say, hey, you're a part of the team. We say this all the time. Belonging is the beginning of ownership. If this new person doesn't belong, then how could they possibly own their part of the leadership of this organization, of this team? And if they don't own a part of this organization or team, then we're already doomed. We're already set up for failure. There's no possible way that we could be successful. And so having a willingness, being willing to accept, give somebody a try, be competent. Again, we're going back to the things that you said: competence, willingness, humility, and confidence, right? Be competent. If you're going to sit there and expect for this new leader to hear you, to listen to you, to be willing to understand, how do we do things here in this team? Help me understand how we do things here in this team. You got to be competent. You have to demonstrate that you know what you're doing. You have to also be humble. You can demonstrate a high level of confidence anchored or buoyed to humility. Confidence without humility, that's probably just arrogance. And you're probably going to lose the chance to communicate directly with this new leader. And so I think it's wise just to walk in that humility, have the confidence that you know what you're doing, demonstrate some competence as that teammate or person or leader that is there already, and be willing to accept. I'd be remiss if I don't note this, because we're talking about this side of the equation and where we were steeped in this. We wrote an article maybe a year or two ago, I'm not quite sure, but it's called Two Sides of the Same Coin. And we're talking about empowerment and accountability, which we can touch on because I think that's fairly important when you talk about level setting expectations and all these components, whether you're bringing a new employee on or you're the new leader coming on in place. And we can drop it in the show notes, because I would really encourage anybody to read it, because it gives everyone a view into the direct conversation that happens between the platoon leader and the platoon sergeant and the platoon leader. What we used to call the new PL talk. I give my perspective of that. You give your perspective of speaking directly to your first platoon sergeant. And I would really encourage that everybody read that, because it will probably give you some good tips and a window into that world.
Yeah. So, by the way, I got to get this on the table. Have you seen the new Netflix documentary about David Beckham? Okay,
I literally am like 20 minutes into episode 3. It's incredible.
Okay. So everybody, you should go watch this. But I can't help but think of this when you think about a person who is an amazing talent and at some point really becomes a leader, and then especially later in his career is moving from club to club. He goes from Man U to Real Madrid and then over to the States to play for the LA Galaxy.
Don't spoil it for me.
Yeah. It's historically accurate, so you can look it up. But there's a lot of really interesting notes. And if you were to watch that 4-part series with this question in mind, I think there's a lot of really interesting, probably some things he does incredibly well. And there might be some things that you note that like could have done that a bit differently, but fascinating stuff in there. One more thing I wanted to share, because I have had the opportunity to kind of move into a leadership role a couple of different times. And something that we share with a lot of folks that we work with is this process that we would maybe roughly call know, understand, and help. And I think this has been something I've always leaned on when going into a new situation, and I've got to be in charge, I've got to lead, but I'm new. And sometimes I just will say this explicitly. In fact, I think it's better if you do, is to get with the people who are now on your team and express a real interest and put a method in place so that you can learn as much as you can about what goes on there as possible, with primary sources, firsthand from the people that are involved in it, as soon as possible. And the way I would say it is, look, I can't do much here. I can't add a whole lot. I certainly am not going to change anything until I feel like I know what's going on around here. And so step 1 is always help me to know what is happening around here. And it's only, once I've got a good feel for what's going on, then I can start to be a bit more informed and start to see things a little more clearly. But I also want to assure you that I'm not going to make any crazy changes or decisions just based on that, because once I know what's happening, I then need to understand how and why these things are happening, right? Because any decent MBA could walk into a scenario and learn pretty quickly like what's going on. And as you're learning, you're gonna see things that don't seem right to you. Mm-hmm. That's inefficient. That doesn't seem like a good process. That person's overpaid. Whatever. And that's fine. You can make a mental note of that as you're learning what is going on. But then you need to take the extra time to understand how it got to be that way, because there may be lots of history that led up to this inefficient process being done the way it's done, and you might want to keep it that way. Or there might be some kind of, personal or interpersonal baggage associated with some of the stuff that you want to understand a little better before you make any decisions. So, know what's going on, but then take the extra time and have your people help you to understand how it got to be that way and why it is that way. Then you've really got a much more clear picture of what you're working with. And then I would use the word help, because rather than say change, which everyone's terrified about for the most part when a new person comes in, they're either terrified of a lot of change or they have unreasonably high expectations of the new person coming in and like changing everything and making it awesome, which maybe the David Beckham story could show you. But in any case, I like to use the word help because, what you really want to do is help the team be better. Mm-hmm. And that might include making some decisions or changing some things or restructuring or doing that kind of deal. But it's not change for change's sake. It's change in the spirit of improvement, right? It's all there for a reason. And so if you can come in and say, look, I want to know what's going on and I want to understand how it got to be that way, and only then I want to do what I can do to help. And that might be removing barriers, streamlining things, etc. Taking that approach and saying it and doing it explicitly with everyone eyes wide open about what you're doing does so many wonderful things. Because for one, it brings down the temperature a lot. You're telling people exactly what you're going to do. So it takes away that kind of fear of the unknown. The second thing it does is it includes them in the process. And so I remember being a young lieutenant and going up to one of my soldiers and saying, hey, show me how this works. And man, they would really light up when I would take an interest in their job and what they did. And I would show them like, I really need to know how to put this crypto in the radio. So show me how it works when you do it. That really is a huge part of helping them be involved in the process. And the third thing it does is it actually gives you, high quality information about what's going on so that you can make informed decisions and actually create some improvement rather than just being the new guy that comes in and wants to put his or her, thumbprint on things and just sort of changes things because it's got to be a little different than the way the last person did it, or, why am I even here?
Yeah.
Which another thing we saw a lot of in the Army that everyone disliked intensely.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that's my take.
Well, no, I love it. And I think it's also important to share that know, understand, and help doesn't just relate to the processes, the technologies, the tools that we're using. It also relates to people. Know, understand, and help from a people perspective. And so one thing that is helpful, and maybe this can help us start to kind of bridge over into the other side of it where you're onboarding a new employee. I've made it a practice over, I don't know, I think I started doing this somewhere around a decade ago where, when I came and took on a new team and realized that, some people weren't as stoked as I was about this promotion for whatever reason. I'm sure they had them. But one thing that I started to do back in that time was study people. Like I would like to get to know you. And I find that it can be helpful to even develop like a one-pager, just something simple where you can and have it right there in front of you. And, at first I was like, well, geez, I hope they don't think I'm like a weirdo. Like this is super awkward. But I just said, like, I really want to get to know you. I really want to better understand what makes you tick. And because I want to help you. I want to help you achieve the goals that you are trying to achieve. And so I got into the habit, and it's evolved over the years, but generally speaking, things like, tell me where you're from, tell me about your life, tell me about your interests, tell me how you like to receive positive affirmation or encouragement, or what kind of methods do you most resonate with? Do you like words of affirmation, like do you a little note, or do you like public attention? Would you prefer it to be more between us, like a small, hey, you really did a great job on that objective, you really hit it, thanks a lot, I appreciate you? Or can I pull you up in front of the room? Can I share about you? Is it monetary? Do you only respond to monetary compensation? Do you respond to professional development? Is it advancement opportunities? And I would really roll this out with people, and oftentimes what I would find at first is that people didn't quite know how to answer the question. They're like, well, what's your angle?
This is weird.
Yeah, they're like, what's your angle? I'm like, my angle is to better understand you. Like, I want to help you. Where are you trying to go? What are your goals? Where do you see yourself in a couple of years? Do you like being here? Because that's the thing, I'll tell you this right now, that we get often wrong as leaders, is that we automatically assume that everybody wants to be promoted. Not true. Not true. Not everybody wants to be promoted. Some people want to be the darn best individual contributor in their role that they could ever possibly be. So they don't want advancement. They want professional development. And when we're coming in as a new leader, just demonstrating that willingness to better know, to understand, I think is super helpful. Transition over to the other side of things. So we've taken quite a bit here to talk about this, which, I think we're just scratching the surface, because we both have a lot of
meat on that bone.
We got a lot of feels on this one, but I want to honor the question. The other side of it, what if you're onboarding a new employee? I would say that that's a really good place to start. I'd like to better know you. I'd like to get to know you. I'd like to understand where you're coming from, because I really do want to see you thrive here. I want to see you do very well. So from a person-to-person perspective, it demonstrates interest. It demonstrates care. It demonstrates the culture of the team. And I think it sets people off in the right tone. Now, having said that, we also need to get to the expectations. What is it that you do here, right? Let's talk about that. And that's where, on the empowerment side of the equation, so we talk a lot about empowerment and accountability. One of the best things that we can do, we onboard people, we help them understand this is the culture, this is who we are, this is how we go about things. The classic Seth Godin, the people like us do things like this. This is our culture. Help me understand you a little bit. Let's talk about what we're setting you forward to do. So, empowerment, guidance, resources, and support. Here are the things that we need you to do. The job, the roles, the responsibility, here are the tasks codified, written out, so we can always look at this together and say, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Here are the different time horizons that are in place. Always helpful when somebody's brand new to say, hey, look, we're gonna get you ramped up here. So it's not like we're gonna go from 0 to 60 in 0.1 second. We want to do a progression, and whatever that is for your business, better than we do. So you pick the right progression, but the point is, let's find a right progression there. Resources. Here's what we have to offer you. Here are the tools, the techniques, the procedures, the teammates. Here are all the things that we'd like to get you spun up on. Some of that might require training. We're going to help you with that. We're going to get you the training that you need. And by the way, just as where I've seen this go real wrong, if you've got somebody getting spun up and there happens to be some technical components that are particularly unique or difficult, let's give them a chance to get spun up on that before we get too wowed out or freaked out about whether or not they're hitting the right wickets or buttons within the thing. And then, so I've talked about guidance, resources, and then support. I think it's important to say, hey, we're going to be here with you. You have support. You've got teammates. Let's assign you a mentor. That's like a pro tip right there. If someone brand new to the organization, assign them a mentor. Not just their frontline leader, but a mentor, because the way messages come across differently from a peer than they do from a manager. And then let's talk about accountability. We're not just going to sit here and say, hey, here's all these things, go get after it, without talking about here's how we measure. Here's how we evaluate how things are going, and then here's how we either recognize or refine.
Yeah, I think that's a helpful framework, and we share that a lot. I would say just maybe a couple of things to add some flavor. Number one is you have to have a process. So, take a hard look at whether or not you have a no-kidding process to onboard people. If you do have one, take a look at it and see if it actually makes sense, and it's not just kind of a box check of administrative kind of onboarding. So, think about how you want to do this and how you want to do it intentionally, and put a process in place that fits your needs and addresses the things that you just talked about. And if there's already one, make sure that it actually makes sense and isn't just sort of a pencil whip. So having a good and an intentional process, I think, is the first thing. And I would say thematically, what you just described is really kind of three things. It's letting people know that they're here and they're on the team. We talked about belonging being the beginning of ownership, and that's whether that's getting to know you, whether that's describing the role. If you're going to go through the effort of getting someone on the team, they're there for a reason. Presumably they've made it through some kind of hiring process. So from day one, they have to be on the team. You got to let them know that they are 100% on the team. It's not, 70% or 80%. If you're on the team, you're 100% on the team. You got to let them know that. Making it clear to them, what it is you need them to do. So there's kind of the expectations piece, I would say, is kind of number two, is like very clear about what you expect of them and what they can expect from you. And then find out from them, hey, what do you need? What do you expect, from me in this? And then that third piece being support, I think, is so important. And whether that's getting them a sponsor, a mentor, whether it's simply saying, hey, let's check back on this in a week or every week, or you can always come to me if you have questions. I think that's really huge. So if I were a new person going into a role that I was kind of nervous about, I would want to know, number one, you want me there, I belong there, I'm on the team even though I'm new. I'd want to be pretty clear about what it is I need to be doing, at least for now. And I would want to know that if I get a little wayward or have a question, I can go to somebody to help keep me on track. I think if you can do that through whatever process makes most sense for you, you can use the empowerment accountability framework. I think that's really going to make a huge difference. So have a process that makes sense, do it on purpose. And if nothing else, let people know that you want them there, that they belong, and don't leave any questions in their mind about what it is they're supposed to be doing. And I think you get smart people on your team, they're gonna thrive in that kind of environment.
Yeah, there's two big mega themes that I'm seeing here that I want to call out, and then kind of as we wrap up, ask a final question. So the things that I'm seeing as a mega theme for the organization, for lack of a better term, is belonging, process, and support. Whichever one of those two that you are, whether you're the new leader coming in or whether you're bringing somebody on board. Then on the other side, there's these internal predispositions, so to speak: competence, willingness, humility, and confidence. Whichever one of those, that you are coming in, whether you're a new person, no matter what. We got a couple, maybe wrapping things up here. I would love for you to share maybe a couple of thoughts on what are some really great ways you've seen people communicate you're on the team, you belong.
Oh, that's good. I'll just rattle some off the top of my head here. I would say, one, spend time with that person. Whether it's a ride along or spending time with them in whatever it is they're doing. My good friend Jason McCarthy always says that presence implies interest, and I like that a lot. So I think that's one that really matters. I think another one is like, bring them around, make sure that they have a chance to meet people. So be an advocate for them, make sure that they've had the right introductions to, the people, process, technology, whatever it is that you're going to need to do. I think that matters a lot. You and I talk about symbols and artifacts, and while they can seem a little cheesy at times, I think, making sure that someone has like their branded Yeti mug or, polo shirt or whatever, I think that kind of thing can really go a long way. Maybe the last piece would be including people in things that maybe they don't need right away, but you want to give them some exposure to. So, hey, come along for this, or jump in on that, or, tune into this thing so you can have some awareness as what's going on. I think if people feel like they've got a peek behind the curtain, they know that you're not trying to keep anything from them, and so they feel like they're really on the team.
Oh, that's great. That is great. Thank you for dropping some of that. And I was hoping that you would definitely hit a little bit of artifacts and symbols, which you can tell they mean an awful lot. You just showed everyone your Yeti mug. That's right, Thermo Fisher Scientific. We've had the opportunity to partner with the Immunodiagnostics Division for the United States here for the last 3 years. And they gave us those because we belong. We're part of the team. And it really means something to us that, they extended something like that. Take a look behind you. You've got the eagle hanging out there. The time from Team Red, White, and Blue. Over your right shoulder, you've got the Special Forces insignias and guidon and everything like that. These things matter and they mean something. And the thing about it is you've been part of other organizations and other teams and whatnot. Look at the things that you're consistently demonstrating. I would argue that it seems clear to me that those are teams that you knew you were a part of and that you belong to. So
yeah, and truth be told, my office in my new home isn't completely set up yet, and I've picked just a few things that I think are most important to display behind me as I get my act together and get my office painted and squared away. So yeah, that does matter a lot.
Yeah, no doubt. And I have no doubt in my mind that you could, within reach, pick up something that says "Go Ruck" on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
no
let's so thanks a ton for the question, and keep them coming, guys. Hopefully this is as fun and beneficial for y'all as it is for us. Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Because we sure do love it. So again, please shoot us any questions that you'd love us to chop up at contact@appliedleadershippartners.com, and we will see you on the next go around.
See ya.